Welcome to Coach Bennett's podcast, where every run has a purpose, where kindness is hardcore, where this is about running, and this is not about running, where every starting line is a finish line in disguise, where rambling still gets you where you need to be, where pineapple will never ruin your pizza, and the sodas, adult and not adult kind, are always cold, and where there is room on the starting line for everybody. I'm Coach Bennett. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 101 of Coach Bennett's podcast. That's right, 101. Woo! Feels really good to say. I gotta tell you, it just feels really good to say. You know, I thought 100 was gonna feel good, but it's that 101 that feels so good. And I'm not saying it's the 100 or 1. It's the and. I love my ands and I love my butts. That's what I love. B-U-T-S. Get your mind out of the gutter. Jeez. All right. I'm excited about this episode. I'm excited about all the episodes, but this one I'm excited about the most because guess what? It's the one I'm doing. Searching for balance. And this is inspired, of course, by all of you, and I've actually written about this before, I think about a year ago. I think it was a year ago. Maybe it was 2 years ago. Anyway, I did a post called Balancing Imbalance, and every year, a couple times a year actually, it's right around now because it's the end of the school year, so I'll get a lot of students that will write about balancing end of school year activities. A lot of time it comes down to getting ready for finals and things like that. But for some, it's also, especially if they're seniors, you know, the last few weeks of school, how emotional it can be, stressful, taxing, and trying to compete at the same time because that's when they have their championship races. So I'll get a lot of people reaching out saying, hey, I've got a lot going on. How do I balance all of these things? Because I want to compete really well. For some, this could be the end of their competitive career on a team, unless they get to run at the next level, or as an adult come back to it. But for many, this may be it, where they're sharing jerseys with people, they're sharing bus rides with people, and for many of them, if they're graduating, they're going to be leaving school. They're going to be leaving this community that they've had for 4 years. For some, it's been 6 years, 8 years, 12 years. So it's a lot to do. But even with adults this time of year, because they may have schoolwork of their own, they may be going back to school or continuing their education. It could be work that they're trying to navigate this time of year. For some people, it's the end of the quarter or it's the end of the fiscal year. And there are spring half marathons, 10Ks. They still could be doing track and field as well. Could be trail running. So there's so much that's going on, not to mention people that are, you know, debating whether or not they want to take on another challenge and sign up for or register for a big race, which means they're going to have suddenly into their life a training program. Another commitment, another thing they look at as a responsibility. So this time of year, the end of the year, right around the holidays, there's a lot of these moments where people are trying to find balance because they're trying to do a whole bunch of things as best as they can. And I think that's where I'd like to start this entire discussion because I think it's important that for anyone who reaches out and asks about this or just deals with it. You don't have to reach out to me for this to be something that you're dealing with. I just want you to know that if you're struggling with this, if you're thinking about reaching out and asking for advice on something like this, or talking to friends, family, people you look up to and respect, I think you have to take a moment and be proud of yourself. And I think you need to acknowledge that this asking for help is a sign of something really special. Because if you're trying to find balance in your life, it means you've got a couple things going on and you're trying to do them as best as you can without sacrificing anything relating to any of these things, any of these responsibilities, any of these obligations, any of these tasks, goals that you have in your life. A lot of times when people think like, I got to find some balance, or I feel like I have no balance, and you're asking for help or advice, it comes from this place like you're doing something wrong, that you're not enough. And I think that's the wrong place to start from. I think what you need to realize is you are trying to do many things as best as you can. That's pretty cool. Let's just start with that. So if you're someone who's struggling with finding balance, I just want you to realize that you're struggling, which means not failure. It means successfully not giving up. And you're struggling, you're successfully not giving up in your attempt to do multiple things really well. That's the starting line. That's a pretty badass starting line. All right. So, I think we also have to realize that there's so many different aspects of our lives that come into play anytime you're trying to take on something that's extraordinary or difficult or new. And I think sometimes we don't give ourselves the credit and the grace we deserve when we're doing that. I'll just give you an example, like just from a coaching perspective. I know that every single athlete in front of me, they've got a work life or a school life or both. They've got a home life. They've got an athlete life. They've got their own personal life. They've got their friendship life. They've got their family life that extends beyond their home. They have all of these lives that they play a part in, that they live in. And you can't really separate them. Doesn't make sense. You can't go to school and pretend that you don't have a home life. You can't be at home and pretend that you don't have a school life or a work life. You can pretend, but you're just lying to yourself. And I know a lot of people say things like, well, you gotta leave that behind. Like when you get to the starting line, don't bring all the baggage from school or from work or from home. And it's like, that sounds really nice that you can just disconnect from reality. And I know what they're trying to say, but I think what would be more beneficial is just saying, it's going to come with you. Let's see if we can get rid of some of this baggage, some of this stress, some of this anxiousness that we don't need, that is not useful, that is useless. I think that's a better idea. And I think it's also understanding that these different lives can help each other. If you're stressed from work, well, your running life maybe can help, especially if you go into running the right way, with the right reasons, for the right purposes, and you run the right way. It's a chance to deal with some of the anxiety and the stress and the pressures that are happening at work. You're going to have to potentially adjust your run as a result, but adjusting your run will lead to a better run because you took into account what's going on at work. And if you have a better run that's been adjusted because of what's going on at work, you're going to end the run better, feeling better, stronger, more confident, less anxious, less stressed. And it's going to give you an opportunity, a chance to deal with work in a better position than if you had just tried to ignore what was going on and run as if there were no issues. That's the reality, which is why I tell you that the most important thing a coach can ever ask an athlete is, how are you doing? And that the cornerstone, the foundation of a great coach-athlete relationship is and always will be honesty. You need to let us know how you're doing so we can adjust. That's the coaching. Training plans are written. It's adjustments to training plans. That's the coaching. That's the real coaching. So it's good to know that you've got these different worlds that you live in, that you experience life in, that you give yourself to, and those are, in a way, the balls that you're juggling. because I'm going to be using some visuals here to kind of get my point across. So just imagine these different aspects of you, these different lives that you live. They're different balls that you're juggling. And, if you just take a moment here, you may want to just pause and think about all of the different lives you live over the course of the day, the different characters you are to different people, the different personas you take on depending on certain situations, the different responsibilities and obligations you have depending on the situation you're in or who you're around or the work that you're doing. That's a lot to have up in the air at any given time. And what you're trying to do is keep them all up in the air. You don't want any of them to drop. That's what you're trying to do. So I hope you know already you're a pretty fantastic juggler. Now, within these worlds, there are other balls that you're juggling. I'll give you an example, like with running. You're trying to find balance. We'll just use the most basic example, just in training. You're trying to find balance in your training as you're trying to progress, as you're trying to deal with things that you don't have much control over, like the weather. Sometimes, the workload you have at work, meaning the hours you have to work or the amount of work you have to do for school. Again, your work life, like all these things I'm just mentioning have an effect on your running. So even when I try to keep us in just your world of running, those other worlds are in there. They are playing a part. They are inspiring some of the actions that you're doing. So just something to think about, but we're going to dig into just that world of running. You're trying to balance the hard and the easy with your training, right? I mean, you're not always running hard. And if you're training for something like a race, or if you're playing running the right way, where you're mixing up the types of runs you're doing and adding and incorporating real diversity into your training, there's going to be hard runs, there's going to be easy runs. And within that, obviously there's things like fartlek, and there's things like tempo runs, and there's long intervals, there's short intervals, there's long runs, and there's short runs, recovery runs, easy runs. There's all different types of things that you're incorporating, and you're trying to find balance between the different types of runs you're doing, the different efforts within those runs, the fast, the not so fast. So you're trying to find balance there, because the closer you're getting to the right balance, which, by the way, can change week to week. Like, how crazy is that? Like, you think like, well, it's 60% easy, 40% hard. Well, no, I mean, you read online, everyone thinks it's like 80-20. Yeah, well, sometimes it's 80-20. Sometimes it's like 90-10. Sometimes it's like 70-30. And what makes up those percentages are different, I mean, so even what's making up the balance is imbalanced and is not consistent. We're going to be mixing it up. Some weeks it's going to be 100% easy runs, depending on the time of year, or if you're coming back from an injury. So we're trying to find the right balance, but it's not always the same structure. It's not always balanced the same way between hard and easy and fast and not so fast. Your volume week to week changes, and it has to take into account what you've already done, and it has to take into account what you're ready to do and what you may have coming up. So even with that, the mileage or the meters you're running, you're trying to find the right balance week to week. It's not even what's within the week. I mean, sure, you could look at it as you're trying to find the right balance within a specific week so it fits and is balanced with the weeks preceding it and sets you up for the weeks preceding it, sure. But again, we're looking for the right balance. It's not always the same. And it's not always the same for the athletes that may be training together. You may have a training partner and realize that she actually runs more mileage than me consistently. Or maybe in the winter, it seems that she handles the mileage better than you do. Or maybe you don't need as much mileage as she does. And yet, you're training partners. It's just that her balance is a little bit different than your balance. So she's going to need slightly different things than you do so you can remain as balanced as possible, so you can be moving forward, so you can find that equilibrium that you need so you feel comfortable, which is something else that I'm going to talk about later, about when we talk about balance, what it really means. So there's all these things within just your running that you're trying to balance so you're not unbalanced, so you don't feel imbalanced, so you don't tip over, fall down, or get dizzy, right? So the balls don't drop to the ground, all of these different visuals, right? But those are some of the things that I want you to be thinking about when you're feeling that maybe you're lacking balance in your life. I mean, think about just how vibrant, detailed, complicated your life is. How many different moving parts there are. How many different people you go in and out of their lives on just a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis or a yearly basis. The different hats you wear over the course of your life, where you might be a parent, or maybe you're a sibling. You could be the son or the daughter of somebody. You could be somebody's boss. You could work for somebody. You could be somebody's nurse, and then you could also be somebody's teammate on a pickup soccer team. Like, we have all of these different things going on. I'm just going to keep coming back to the fact that this isn't as simplistic as I just can't get things under control. Give yourself more credit than that. Life is complicated. You're complicated. Finding the balance between those two things, you and life, is really complicated. Just having the strength and the confidence to ask for help means that you've got a lot figured out already. All right? So I think if we go back to that visual of just juggling all of these things, I'm going to add a couple things to it. I want you to imagine yourself juggling a whole bunch of balls. Some big ones, some small ones, some are red, some are green, and what I want you to do then is I want you to put yourself on a unicycle, and I want you to also have like a stick, and on the stick is a couple of plates. So you're balancing a bunch of plates on a stick while you're juggling with one hand, a couple of balls, like 5-6 balls. I mean, so you're going to have to really launch some of these high up, and you're on a unicycle. And I think that's kind of the way that I look at trying to balance an athlete's life, or help balance an athlete's life. And keep in mind, I'm just going to, kind of jump ahead here. I shouldn't, because it should be like the big, like, ta-da at the end, but I think you know what I'm going to say. I don't think there really is any such thing as a balanced life. So if you think of that unicyclist, which is you, juggling with one hand and having the plates in the other. Anytime I've used this, most people, when I say, what's going on? What's the unicyclist doing? They're like, well, they're kind of like pedaling real quick, and then they pedal real slow, and they're going a little bit forward, and they're going a little back, because they're trying to balance the plates and juggle at the same time. And I'm like, perfect. Because that's successful, right? The plates haven't fallen. The balls haven't hit the ground. The unicyclist hasn't fallen off the unicycle. If you could say, is this a successful act? You'd say, yes, it's amazing. Because that's the reality, right? I mean, that is what I would say, is that's the visual of successfully balancing. That would be a successful balancing act, wouldn't you say? Wouldn't you cheer for that person? Wouldn't you get out of your seat and cheer for that person if you saw them pull this off? Well, in many ways, that's what we're all doing. We're successfully pulling it off. And if we drop a plate, if we drop a ball, I think you would make the case that we were trying as best as we could. If we were watching somebody do it, we would say, yeah, they were trying as best as they could. And then you know what you do? You get another plate, you get another ball, and you try again. But I just want that kind of to be the visual in your head of what you're attempting to do when you're trying to find balance. It doesn't mean that there's 50 over here and 50 over here and the scales are perfect. To me, balance means that unicyclist. That's what we're trying to do, because we live in reality, right? At least I hope we do. And there is no such thing as having a perfect balance. But you can find balance. It's just you're pedaling a little bit this way, you're pedaling a little bit that way, and you're juggling a few balls, and you got to move a little bit to the side. You may have to bend over a little over there, and whoop, the plates are going. That's what it's like. You're constantly making small adjustments to make this work as best as you can. I would say the biggest changes that occur is not that we get to a state of perfection with all of these things going on. I think at certain parts of our life, we just have less things we're dealing with. And I think that's what the biggest difference is. Is it easier to balance everything that's going on for that student that reaches out a month and a half ago? Sure, because we're not coming up on finals. So in many cases, it's balanced, maybe because there aren't as many balls in the air. Or maybe exams are the addition of 3 or 4 plates now. Okay, well now suddenly things are getting a little bit harder. That's, I think, a great way to look at this. When you're trying to find balance, really what you're trying to do is trying to navigate balancing more. Or sometimes the weight of the balls change, the size of the plates change. Sometimes, you're riding around on a unicycle, but now there's like 3 or 4 little puppies, and you got to watch out that you don't run over the puppies because nobody likes that in an act. So you got to navigate that. The goal is still the same. Can I stay upright and still achieve what I'm trying to achieve, which is have none of the balls hit the ground and have none of the plates hit the ground? And I think what happens if you're, again, imagining this person, there can be these times when it seems like the unicyclist has everything under control. And I think we can believe that, well, now it's easy, right? It looks suddenly easy. Like, oh, look, the unicyclist is just kind of doing like a half pedal up, a half pedal back. The juggling seems to be happening. The plates aren't swerving. Yeah, I would make the case that in that may be the hardest part of the entire act, because the amount of focus it takes to give off the impression that this is easy, I would say it's probably the hardest part of the act, because you're giving yourself less leeway to get this done. I don't know. I guess, I would say that there's an element of chaos that has to come along with this balance. Because remember, I'm starting from a place where I don't think there's such a thing as perfectly balanced. I just don't. I don't think that's a reality. I'll give you an example. Like in my life, there are times when I'm a dad, and I'm a husband, and I'm a coach, and I work, and I'm a sibling, and I'm a son, and I'm an uncle, and I'm a nephew, and I'm a neighbor, and I'm a stranger, and sometimes I'm just somebody that's sharing the road with you, and a friend, and to other people I'm a really good friend, and to other people I'm a great friend, and to other people I'm a longtime friend. So there's a lot of different things going on, and at different times of my life, some have taken precedence over others. Some have kind of been put on a back burner. Sometimes it's been really, really important to spend the overwhelming amount of my time being focused on dad responsibilities or husband responsibilities. There have been some times where work has been overwhelming, and suddenly I'm trying to find balance there because I'm spending so much time doing the work, whether it's travel, writing, working, all these different things. When I was an athlete, there were times when I was trying to find balance between being a student and becoming a better teammate, but also becoming a better runner, and also realizing that I had other responsibilities like work and what I was going to do after I graduated. There's all of these things that are going on at the same time. And what I found was that there were some times when I could make the case, looking back, that when I had so much going on, when I was on the unicycle, balancing plates, and juggling a ton of balls, I was probably closest maybe to finding balance in my life. And maybe it was because I was spreading out so much of myself in so many different areas. And I don't mean spreading myself out thin, like a little bit of butter over lots of toast. I'm just talking about the fact that I felt like, okay, I'm in control of what looks like a very out of control situation. Like when we watch the unicyclists pedaling around and swerving a little bit this way and swerving a little bit that way, they may feel like, no, I've got this. I've got the rhythms. I've got the slide to the left and the slide to the right. I've got that. It's actually when there's less going on that maybe you feel the most imbalanced. And I want you to be okay with admitting that sometimes when you don't have a million balls in the air, you feel like you've got the least amount of balance in your life. That's okay too. Sometimes people will not say or admit that I feel like I'm losing control and I really don't have much in my life to control. That's what it feels like. I'm not racing right now. All right. Work is just very calm. Home life is very calm. But you know what? I just feel like something's missing, or I feel like I'm not doing something, or I feel like I should be somewhere I'm not. Like, these are things that go on, and sometimes these are the balls that you're looking for in the air. Like, shouldn't there be like 6 or 7 in the air? Or I'm being underutilized. That can lead to a feeling of imbalance as well. We often think that when we feel like we don't have balance in our life, that there's too much of stuff. Well, it can also be the case that there's too little of stuff. And that can make you feel off. So, I'll give you an example where I was walking through, I guess was it through the Bronx? Yeah, we're walking through the Bronx. It was Tammy and I, Coach Bennett the Grader, and I had 2 bags. I had a bag that you could push that had wheels, and I had one that was over my shoulder. And I couldn't find the right way to do this. It just seemed like one was slightly too light and one was a little bit too heavy, and I couldn't figure it out. And the crazy thing is, what solved it was, keep in mind, they were both heavy, all right? So this was, and it was hilly, all right? So this was not fun. And we had to walk for basically at least a mile with these bags. And what actually made it work was the addition of a smaller bag on top of one of the bags. And then suddenly I was like, oh, I get it. I get this. Okay. So I needed more weight to make it easier to push and carry these bags. Isn't that wild? I mean, I guess it shouldn't be. There's probably some people who know about weights and pulleys, engineers right now are that's called the, Flatulian principle of weight disparity or something stupid like that. And they're going to show off, and they're going to pause the podcast, and they're going to say, oh, this Coach Bennett, you can tell he didn't take math or engineering or physics to a high level because he was talking about weight disparity, and whoever they're with is just going to go, oh my goodness, this is just the worst, because he tries to bring up some type of engineering concept every time he listens to a podcast. So anyway, take a minute. You don't need to let anybody know about whatever physics principle or engineering principle it is. All I'm trying to say is that give yourself some grace if you feel like things are off kilter, lacking equilibrium, not balanced, and it's not because you have so much going on. It could be because you feel like you don't have so much going on. Just want to throw that out there. So if I could give a little advice here as we're getting towards the end of the episode, it's once again starting with a conversation. If you feel like you're struggling to find balance, start with the fact that you're doing a lot. You're trying your best. Because if you're trying to find balance, it means you're trying to make things better for yourself and for everyone that gets to take advantage of all the things that you do in your life, which is great. Because, by the way, yes, you do things that people take advantage of. And I mean that in a good way. I don't mean like somebody loses when they're getting taken advantage of. What I'm saying is it could be support that you're giving out there. It could be the work that you do. Maybe you're a teacher. Maybe you're a student. Maybe you're a teammate. Maybe you're, like I said, you're a son, a daughter, father, mother, an aunt, an uncle, a cashier, a nurse. It doesn't matter. The point is you have things that you're putting out there. And by trying to find this balance, what you're saying is, I can do a better job. I feel like I can do a better job from what I'm already doing. That's pretty cool. So start from that place. The next thing that you should do is just acknowledge that it's not about finding a balance in terms of a perfect balance, the scales being set evenly. That's not what it's about. It's about setting it up so it feels right for you. You're putting yourself in an optimal situation. It doesn't need to be a perfect situation. You're putting yourself together on a unicycle with the correct amount of plates and the right amount of balls, and you're trying to figure out pedal a little bit, pedal a lot, so you can do your best, so you can keep this balancing act up. But it's a constant movement. It's lots of shifts, adjustments, changes. That's what it's about. It's not about setting things up and the scales being set. It's about balancing what will always be a constant state of imbalance so you can thrive, so you can be your best, so you can improve. And it's not just about one thing. If you want to run your best and you're trying to find balance in your life so you can run your best, it's not just about the running, and it's not just about home. It's not just about school. It's not just about work. They all work together. What you're trying to find is the right situations so they can work together at their best. And that is always going to be in a state of flux as well, just like your training is. Just like your training is. If there was a perfect balance in training, we'd have you do the same stuff every single week. That's what we would do. It would be the same every single week. And that's not how it is, because we know that's not the case. We know that your life changes, so the training has to change. We know that the progression is going to take different paces to progress, so we're going to have to change the paces you run so you progress. We know that there are certain times of the year in your life, in the training cycle, where it makes sense to do this much hard and this much easy, this much fast, this much not so fast, this much volume, backing off the volume. We know that it's constantly going to be something that we're tinkering with, changing, adjusting, just like that unicyclist is constantly shifting and adjusting the plates on the stick, by the way, and the balls that they're juggling. That's what you're doing. So don't think that by asking, hey, I need some help trying to find some better balance, not perfect balance, better balance in my life, you're doing anything wrong. You're doing something that you're always going to need to be doing. Searching for balance. It's something you're always going to need to be doing, which is searching for balance. That's what you're doing. You're not going to find it. It's the act of searching for it that keeps us balanced enough. It's today I was at the track at Nike WHQ. We're having some open track workouts on Wednesdays, and it was really cool. And we start out with, warm up, and then we do some stretching. And I always like to make sure that the athletes know that we're incorporating some balancing into our stretching, because every stretch is going to demand a certain level of balance. So I tell them, once you feel like you're balanced and you're in control, then we can proceed through the stretch and then come out of it. Now, here's the thing. I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for some control. I'm looking for some strength, because if you're strong enough, you're going to have enough control to be balanced. I'm not looking for perfect balance. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone to find the balance so they can do the stretch correctly. That's all. That's what we're looking for. But I also know that a week from now, that they're going to have to go through this, and it's not just going to be as easy as last time, potentially. It might not be. It might be harder. Why? Well, because maybe they were standing on their feet all day long, and now their legs are a little tired, which means it's going to be a little bit harder to find that balance. So it's going to take a little bit more time. That's okay, because I know things change, and we may have to adjust. We may have to shift. We may have to move a little bit differently in order to find that balance that we're looking for, just like the unicyclist. So be kind to yourself. Give yourself some grace. Ask yourself, how are you doing? Remember, if you're finding balance in one part of your life, you should be looking at the other parts of your life as well. And then just be a great teammate and coach to yourself. If you can do those things, you're going to have the best opportunity to keep those balls in the air, to keep those plates on top of the stick, and to stay on the unicycle. But the last thing I'm going to say here is sometimes we just need to get off the unicycle, put the balls down, put the plates down, and just take a break. And that's, again, where you just need to have those honest conversations with yourself, the people you care about, could be your family, could be your friends, could be your coaches, and just say, hey, I just need to take a break. And guess what? You can get back on the unicycle. Because once you learn how to ride a unicycle, you never forget. Although I don't know if that's true or not. I've actually never been on a unicycle. So that may not be true. So if you are out there and you know how to ride a unicycle, let me know if that's true. Of course, I guess you'd have to be in a situation where you would potentially have forgotten. Maybe you're just someone who used to do it a long time ago, and now like 10 years has passed. Did you get right back on the unicycle and figure it out? Maybe you're a little rusty, but you knew what you were doing, because then it works. And then I don't feel so bad about coming up with a metaphor that actually is not true. But anyway, that's episode 101. So cheers to everyone out there trying to balance all those imbalances in their lives, because success isn't about finding perfect balance. It's just about balancing. Okay? That's it. So, cheers to everyone. As always, thank you for listening. If you haven't left a review or a rating, I say it every single time. Please do. If you haven't yet, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you people that have not rated or reviewed the show. It's not going to take very long. You just put 5 stars, if it's up to 5 stars, and you leave a review. If you can leave a review, if there's somewhere to leave a review on the platform, just do it. Just do it. And follow the show on whatever platform. These things help. All right. Thank you as always. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And I'll meet you on the next starting line. Thank you so much for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast today. And if you haven't already subscribed or set yourself as a follower to the podcast, I really hope you would. And make sure you check out the show notes, because in those show notes, you're going to find a link to Coach Bennett's newsletter and all the social media sites I'm on, like Instagram and Threads and Cameo and Blue Sky and Nope, not on that one anymore. So all the ones I am on, you're going to find it in the show notes, so check that out as well. And as always, thank you again for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast. Until next time, you keep taking care of yourself and each other.